Hey everyone, this is Krish. Hope you're doing well and you're staying safe. Stay home. And while you're staying home, maybe you can watch this video in which I'm going to talk a little bit about choosing a framework for building a native mobile app. So obviously, if you're let's say you're getting out of building a native mobile app, whether it's mobile first or mobile second, and you're trying to come up with, okay, well, how should I go about this? And hopefully this video might help you. So a few things first, right? In terms of expectations, you want this app obviously to work on an Android device and on iOS and plus Windows and maybe other operating systems, but I would imagine the majority of the market is split between Android and iOS. So you want it to function on both those devices. So that's the basic requirement, right? And then let's take a reasonably simple app where you may have plenty of pages, public and secure pages, and nothing out of the ordinary, right? Let's say it's an app. You have a bunch of features. It has some server-side integration. It's going to make requests, REST or Graph API calls to the server and get some responses back and render it on the mobile pages. Quite typical. So how would you go about picking a stack or a framework for this? There are several different options. I mean, no matter what we do today, there are a number of options, right? So one of the first decisions you want to make is, how do I go about doing this from a stack standpoint? Maybe not the first, but one of the early decisions, because like it or not, you're going to be married to it for quite a while, right? And even if you end up integrating other frameworks and bringing them into the mix, the fact that you started out with one and you've written a lot of your code and a lot of your pages are based on that initial framework that you chose, that's not going to change for a long time. And then one more assumption is I'm going to assume you're a reasonably small shop, because a lot of my experience in the last many years has been with smaller shops, including my own company. If it's a much larger organization, maybe there's a lot of money on the table, maybe things happen a whole lot differently, right? So let's assume a startup or a company that's small enough to be worried about the correctness and the longevity of these decisions, which I'm sure holds good for you in large organizations, but you get the point. Anyway, so what are some of the options, right? And one of the early decisions you want to make is, do I want to use a cross-platform framework, or do I want to build using native languages, right? And what I mean by that, if it's not already obvious, is, do I want to use Swift to build an iOS app, and do I want to use Kotlin, right, to build an Android app essentially, right? So that's an option, and that's obviously one of the first questions you're going to ask yourselves. Hey, should I just go about doing that in the native languages, using the native frameworks, so I'm not worried about a number of other factors which we would have to worry about at this point if you did not choose them? What are those factors, and what can drive the decision, right? And you can read about this, and it's there all over the place. One of the most common things, and I'm going to state some of the obvious here, is it's going to take you longer, obviously, right? So because if you have to build it cross-platform, you're building it once for the most part, at least, barring deployment and some changes that are very specific to the native OS. But if you're doing it on each of those platforms, then you're going to have to build it that many times. So it's simple math, right? It's going to take you maybe twice as long, maybe shorter, maybe longer, but it's all right. I think it's twice as long. And if you did choose that approach, how might you want to go about it? Let's also talk a little bit about that. But again, so that's one of the first questions. Do I have the money and time and resources to build them individually for each of these operating systems? Or do I want to go with a cross-platform option that can theoretically and practically help me deploy it to all of these different platforms? Now, if you did grow the native route, yeah, you will build it in Swift, and then on the other side, you'll pick Kotlin, say to build the Android apps essentially, right? And I won't go a whole lot into those aspects, because I'm kind of going to personally, right, even for us and for smaller shops, I feel like you're going to have a darn good reason to pick each of those native, the approach to build them separately. If you have, if your app is doing something real fancy, and I'm using that word loosely, it's not just UI being fancy, but if it has a lot of integration at the OS level, then you would be better off actually building them separately, because a lot of these cross-platform technologies may not solve all of your problems there. So you might very well find yourselves in a situation where you're trying to get something done, and that integration provided by the cross-platform the stack is not there, it's not stable, or it's not good enough, or just doesn't do it, so you're a little bit stuck. Unless that's the scenario, and that I want to say more often than not that may or may not be the case. So relying on a cross-platform approach for reasons I've already mentioned, like the pace, the time to market, and just having to do less to get them out on different devices, and limited budget, all of them sort of lead you towards the cross-platform alternatives. So let's talk a bit more about cross-platform. So if you have the money and the time, I don't know if there's really a good reason to not do it using the native platforms, right? If you had all of the money and all of the time and all of the resources, or even some of all of these items, I think the question is, why would you want to do it cross-platform? Sure, it brings a bunch of things to the table that we're going to talk about, but maybe there isn't the greatest of reasons to doing that. But if you have limitations in each of these areas, or all of those areas, or some of them, then you certainly want to look at a cross-platform alternative. And when it comes to cross-platform, there's again plenty of choices out there. And again, I probably don't recall all of them, but some of them I've actually used in the past. Xamarin is one, right? It's a Microsoft technology that lets you build cross-platform apps. And again, there's no right or wrong answer going with any of these as it is these days. It's just what your preference is, right? What you like. It's just your choice. Like for instance, I'm an iPhone user and a Mac user. I drank the Steve Jobs Kool-Aid like many years or decades ago, and I genuinely like Apple products. It's not like you're forcing yourself to like it because it's cool, or it's considered cool. Sometimes it is, right? It's just that I like the way the products interact. I like the touch, the feel, the OS X, the platform, whether it's iOS or OS X or whatever it is. I'm just able to, without making an effort, I'm able to relate to the product, the company, and the offering. So that's home for you, right? So there's no reason to look elsewhere. So there's a certain kind of bias that always plays. I mean, all of us have some kind of bias. And even when you try to make a rational decision, I think subconsciously these factors would play a role. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. So I did use Xamarin once. It was all right, but again, I'm not a huge fan of Microsoft technologies in general. And then the products I've used within the Microsoft umbrella are only products that I'd used previously before they got acquired by Microsoft. Like I'm a huge LinkedIn fan, but I've been using it almost from day one, and then Microsoft acquired it, right? So it's in that sense. I cannot think of any Microsoft offering that I've looked at and I've been blown away by it. But that's just me, my personal likes and dislikes. It doesn't mean they're good, bad, or ugly. It's obviously a fantastic company, right? In any case, so Xamarin was all right. We ran into a few issues, but I just didn't feel at home. If you want me to quantify it anymore, it's actually it's been a little while, I think, since I've done that work, so I don't recall all of it. So feel free to check it out. That's certainly an option that's on the table. So I moved off. I was not inclined to picking that again. So the next few options on the table, the next one that came to mind was React Native. I'm a huge fan of React on the web. I think it's a fantastic framework for the web. It does things beautifully with or without integration with other state management things, whether it's Relay or Redux, whether it's within the world of React or slightly outside common libraries that integrate well enough with React. I love React on the web. I mean, that's a Kool-Aid we are kind of yet to consume in entirety, but we're definitely going to be there at some point.